Well, thank you everyone for joining for this event, which is the Intro to the Graph with Encode. It's part of our 8-part educational series. I know a lot of you are Encode regulars attending today, have enjoyed some of our other educational series and events, and great to see you back. And if you are completely new, welcome. Enjoy being part of the community. There's bucket layers of opportunities, and we're going to take you through today one such example of the cool stuff you can do in Encode, which is learn about great protocols. This is a little word about Encode to begin with. So Encode is we are here for your education. We are an education company. We train people about blockchain and get them experienced, get knowledgeable. We do this across several fronts, and one being educational series, the other being hackathons, the other being boot camps, accelerators. And we do all of these with the leading protocols, of which Graph is obviously very much one, and very good friends of ours. But the point is for you to learn about crypto in whatever way that may be. And some of you will just be learning for the first time and getting a little bit more experience. And some of you very much will come on to your question in a minute, Brashad. And some of you will be using this as a platform to get into the industry, to become a developer, advocate, a business dev person, enter a hackathon, be part of an accelerator, whatever it may be. There's many kind of opportunities, and we hope you flourish in all of them. So in terms of educational material, we will share a Medium post after every event. All of these events are converted from Zoom into a YouTube and Medium for your enjoyment later on, and that will go on online tomorrow morning or afternoon. So let us go into it a bit. So please do join our Discord. That is a place to find out all events. I'm missing our Telegram, which I have to put in here as well, but Anupam will drop the link to that in as well. And that is a place to find out about everything going on with Encode, talk to people in the community, get involved with. There's a dedicated Graph channels there as well. So do get involved in that. But yeah, please do join the Discord, and Anupam will put a link into the chat. So about the series in general, so it's an 8-event series. It will happen three this week, and then continuing up until Christmas every week. It's all online, live via Zoom, led by the Encode team. So myself and my colleagues will then share every event, as I said, on YouTube and Medium. And really, we see this as a launch pad for you into the ecosystem. And these events are not designed to be restrictive. They are for both a technical and non-technical audience. So please do not worry. We're not going to go too hard into the technical side. Some of the events are more technical. We'll talk about the events in a moment, but they're supposed to be fairly accessible in general. And you can see from the schedule here. So we have this week is a triple header. I'm not sure how that happened, but let's say it was by design. So today, the Intro to the Graph. Taken Klein is the co-founders of Edge and Node. And Node are the team responsible for kind of maintaining the Graph, and the face of the family team of the Graph who set that up. So Tegan has been part of Graph for a while, and we'll be giving an AMA, chance for you to ask any questions about her background there as well. On Thursday, we talk about the data economy. So why is data so important? We'll talk about that a little bit today. On Tuesday, we talk about subgraphs in particular, which for those of you that already know a little bit, those subgraphs are kind of everything. On Thursday, we'll talk about curating. On Thursday the 18th, we'll talk about curating and delegating. On Thursday 25th, how to get involved with the graph, what opportunities are there. On Thursday the 2nd, we'll talk about Avalanche, which is one of our other partners, and how to use Graph. A lot of what we'll talk about today is Ethereum, but you can use Graph on other chains. And on Thursday, the 9th of December, a project showcase. I'll just stop there and check for questions. Okay, looking good. So let's talk about what we actually want to talk about today. What is the basic problem here? Well, the basic problem is, how do I get blockchain data out of a blockchain? This is what the problem the Graph is trying to solve. Is a blockchain itself, a smart contract, for those who are not aware, a smart contract is effectively how you interact with a blockchain. Or rather how you build applications on top of a blockchain. It is a contract that self-executes based on certain conditions being met, and involves multiple parties. And once it executes, you cannot reverse that transaction. It is condemned to history. With blockchains, we obviously get lots of data out of them. Like there are things we'd want to know that are happening on chain. How the hell do we get that data out? Because we might, for instance, want to know who bought what at one time, or find out more complicated things than that, and get them into both real world and blockchain applications itself. And in simple terms, the problem we're trying to solve is how do we get blockchain data out of the blockchain in a way that is easy and simple and not cumbersome to build. And this is what the graph is basically trying to do. So it's a decentralized protocol. We'll talk about why that's important later, for indexing and querying data. So that basically means getting data out of a blockchain. And it started with Ethereum. And what the graph does is it make it possible to query this data really simply. And a lot of you, if you've done hackathons before, one of the simplest challenges there'll be is just like set up a subgraph. We'll talk about what subgraph is later. Basically just a way of getting data out of a particular blockchain or a particular application. And this information is really valuable because in simple terms, just knowing what information is going on in a smart contract and what's happening on an application is good. But in aggregate, obviously, we can do some exciting things. And we'll talk about what sort of applications use the graph and kind of how they use the graph in a moment. I'm going to take a glug of water there. We'll talk about the utility of GRT a bit later, but it's actually not necessarily free. To actually index the data actually costs something, which is paid in GRT. So, for example, if you take something like Uniswap. Now, some of you might be aware of Uniswap, some of you may not be aware of Uniswap. But Uniswap, in very simple terms, is an exchange. It's a place where I can trade. You can see this is my open workshop-based wallet, and I can trade between two tokens very easily. Let's go ETH and ARV. I'm not actually going to do the transaction, but it's very slow. We'll ask about Chainlink in a moment. I'll talk about Chainlink in a moment, and we'll talk about June and Nansen in a moment too. Let's take something like Uniswap. Uniswap is on the back end there's a smart contract going on here. So it's a smart contract that trades ETH to ARV, and it's also decentralized, by the way. It's an decentralized application, a DApp. And I might want to get some information about what kind of trades are happening, or like in the contract, like who the contract owner is, or like many different things. Another example is Bored Ape Club. Oh, I thought I had that link loaded. Let's go. So let's look at this. Is another classic blockchain project. It's an NFT collection, and these, you may have seen these before. And this is cool, but what if I want to kind of peel beneath the surface and get some information? What I'm talking about here is the contract itself. So if you go to something called Etherscan, again, we'll talk about Ethereum purely here. Etherscan gives me, it's an explorer. It gives me a look at all the transactions and things that are happening on chain. It also gives me the contract that I can see, because everything in crypto is permissionless, and I should be able to, and open, and I should be able to see everything. But what if I want to get data about each of these transactions that's happening via this smart contract? So I don't just want to get the smart contract data. I don't want to just get the transaction data, because that's obviously fairly easy just to scrape. But I want to get specific data about specific transactions that is not obviously displayed on Etherscan. Amounts. I want to get what block did it take place. Like, I want to get this huge amount of data in aggregate. This is when I want to use something like the graph, and I want to do it in a very simple, quick way. And maybe I want this to feed into my application, so that if something happens on another application, I want something to happen on my application. It's actually kind of difficult to get this data directly, and especially to get it very kind of quick. So we want to do, and in a way that is kind of, I can feed into my application into like an API fashion. This is when I'm going to use the graph. And most applications of blockchain use the graph, because most applications need to get data about what's happening on chain. You might even have to get, even in simple terms, I want to just get information about, I want to get data about what's happening in my own application and use that to kind of tell me about future transactions. So this is, in all these ways, we're going to need data. And so we're going to use the graph. We're not going to take questions, or rather, please put questions in chat, and I'll take them at regular intervals. So please keep microphones off. So what kind of data? It's things like, who is the owner? What is where, if it's an NFT, where is the content? What's the content URL? What's the total supply of a token? It's things that are directly into the smart contract, and we can go very complicated very quickly, but just to give you an idea of what kind of basic pieces of data we might want to kind of collect. So why is this actually hard? So why can't I go to a blockchain directly and do this? Well, if I was doing this actually like properly and doing this in a kind of way that like is like in a way that I can use as an API that I can input into an application at scale, is that I'd have to process every single transfer event emitted. So I'd have to go to the contract, I'd have to be listening, I'd have to be collecting this data myself. I'd have to go to IPFS if data was stored there. IPFS is just a decentralized file storage system, and try and get the data directly from there. It's going to take ages. Like chains get reorganized every once in a while. Like some transactions aren't final. There's loads of little tiny details that, of course, this is like possible to do, but like it's going to be hard. Like, what if there was an off-the-shelf solution, i.e., the graph? The graph then saves the day. So it's a decentralized protocol that indexes, enables fast querying of blockchain data. And again, we'll talk about why this decentralization is important. So it's a really easy, simple tool that is like so important that we have GraphQL in like a non-blockchain world, and we want to get this data to build cool applications. And we're not trying to do anything like groundbreaking here. Like it is cool in some, we take a step back, but in general, we're not doing anything groundbreaking. We're just trying to do something that's very much in traditional development, a very normal thing, but do it with blockchain data and try and do it in a decentralized manner. So how do we actually do this physically? We use something called, so we want to basically, any of those of you that built our application before, you'll be familiar with something called an API, which just means basically a stream of data coming in. And this stream of data in kind of in the graph world is just called subgraphs. There's no actual like graphs here, guys. Like there's no like pretty Venn diagrams or something, just to kind of get rid of that. But anyway, we have this thing called index subgraphs, and they are the things that actually deliver the blockchain data. So let's say I wanted to get data from the smart contract of Bored Ape Yacht Club and every single transaction. So data like, let's go into the transaction itself. So lots and lots of data about what's happening here. But I don't always want like one piece of data. I want like thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. I'm looking for specific things that are happening at specific times for whatever reason. Then I would use the graph, and I would therefore have a subgraph of Bored Ape Yacht Club, for instance. Cool. And that can then be queried using standard GraphQL API. We won't go over that at the moment. I don't want to get too complicated. It's supposed to be a whistle-stop tour to give you some vague understanding of the graph and what it's kind of doing. So you can obviously use a hosted service for this, and we'll talk about why you don't want to. And this kind of goes down to a methodological point. We'll call it that. But in general, they're both every sort of implementations of the graph node. Which again, we don't really have to know too much for now. But in general, how does a subgraph work? So each subgraph has a description, which defines in the smart contract what the data we're actually looking for. So maybe I want to look for, let's go back. No, where is it? Let's go contract. Maybe I want to know for every transaction, who did it, what the amount was, when it happened, what block it was, what was moving, like what ape was being traded, what the IPFS link is for that, like all this data for whatever reason. Like, I don't know why I might need this, but you might kind of need this. Well, I would basically define a subgraph and tell it what information I want to listen to and want to kind of get. And these descriptions are known as the subgraph manifest. You don't really need to know these things. It's just a little piece of information. Once you have written this, once you've said, like, I want this data, you can then use a graph to store this data and tell someone, we'll talk about the indexer, someone who's going to do this on your behalf, to get this data, and they can basically send it to me through an API, which is basically the subgraph. And this kind of in general looks like this. again, we'll go into more depth later. So I want to give you kind of a 10,000-foot view. But it kind of looks like this. I've stolen this directly off the Graph website, so please don't applaud my or my team's art skills. This was stolen. But let's actually look at it. Hopefully you can all see my mouse. But so we start here. We have a DApp. It has information, transactions, effectively, like that. That's what data it is. Like any event in a smart contract is from a transaction. Is things moving between data or money, usually money, or something with financial value moving between two parties. And this goes through, these go through smart contracts, obviously. And each of them, these smart contracts have events, things like transactions happening, someone becoming a new owner, bits of data associated with this, like what's changed hands, how did it change hands, through which platform did it change hands, what amount of it's changed hands, what is the history of that thing that changed hands. And this then goes into the graph node. I hate my mouse, it's being weird. So it goes in, but now like this data is like fairly unsophisticated. It's very raw. Like I want to put it into something that is a bit more sophisticated. So we have this thing, this mapping, where we take all this data and we map it to the thing we actually want, and kind of clean it up a bit. Again, I'm going to kind of leave this. This is the kind of hard technical bit. I'm going to leave this now, but it comes back shiny, clean, and ready to kind of use, and then goes via the GraphQL API and back to a DApp. It doesn't have to be the DApp itself. That can then go back into a DApp itself, or it doesn't need to go into a DApp. We'll look at that later, but in general, you want to use this information to go back into blockchain applications. Obviously, there are worlds in which you might just want this blockchain data to make trading decisions and put it into a dashboard. And this is not a DApp, it's a normal app, an app for yourself. But the good thing about the graph itself being decentralized is when you put this, and this is so important, one of the reasons why it's very important for the graph to be decentralized is if you're building a decentralized application, you have to be sure that that data going in is from a source that cannot be compromised. So the graph itself being decentralized and getting data from a blockchain and feeding them back into dApps means the integrity of that dApp is maintained. This is kind of very important. If we're building dApps, we don't want to be relying on centralized servers, centralized services. It's kind of why it's important. And it's why every stage we kind of have to make sure it is decentralized. So this is nice. We'll go into more depth later. I'm going to take a brief break just to kind of talk about the kind of some of the questions. So someone mentioned like what is June Analytics in relation to this? Well, June Analytics is just an analytics dashboard. I'm going to show you what it is. Like it's cool, like it's great, mainly for making kind of trading decisions, and it's cool, but it's not. This is not about the presentation of the data, but about getting a lot of data and being able to feed it back. It's not just the getting of the data, perhaps I didn't emphasize this, but the ability to very easily feed it in via an API into dApps. I don't think June Analytics is decentralized. Like, don't shoot me on that. And I'm not sure if Nansen is the same either. Again, Nansen, for those of you who want to know, is like an analytics platform. I'm not sure they're decentralized. It's not quite what we're doing here. They're not working at the same scale. Graph is very decentralized. Like anyone can create a new subgraph. We'll talk through that later. But also, I'm not sure these services are decentralized. You use the graph not just to get the data, but to also be very easy to feed the data into building other decentralized applications or applications in general. And Chainlink is an oracle. So Chainlink is about, this is like, well done for making this point. It is important to know. So Chainlink is about feeding real world data into smart contracts. So things like what is the weather, or like what is the price of this thing, and that's what we call an oracle. And obviously this is important because blockchains can't interact with the real world. The graph is trying to take data from a blockchain and feed it back into applications, usually decentralized applications. So there is a huge difference. I hope everyone kind of understands that. An oracle takes real world data and feeds it into smart contracts. because that's important, because I might want to write a smart contract that says, if the world ends, this is a stupid one, but if the world ends, send and upon $1 million. Well, how do I then know this is perfectly reasonable to do if and only if I know when the world ends? Or more simply, if the price of Ethereum goes to 5K, sell my Ethereum would be a really easy smart contract, or buy this thing or do this other thing on chain. I need to get that information somehow. And so a lot of DeFi, if I look at something like Arv, will use Chainlink. So one of the ways they can generate an interest rate is they know what the price of DAI is, and they know what the liquidity of DAI is, and they know what the volume of DAI is. So it's very easy to find an interest rate after that, and they'll get this data through Chainlink. This is not at Graph. Graph, we're getting very specific events. And by events, I mean small pieces of data that are not aggregated. Price is an aggregate. It's the average price on every exchange, effectively, or in case of CoinGecko, it's the current, well, there's various ways to define price, but let's assume it is the current fair value of something on a particular exchange is what price actually is. Whereas Graph would tell us, okay, I want to find out all the information about every transaction involving DAI. And obviously this is like a lot of data, and how am I going to put that into a way that can very easily be used in an application? So Arv would also use Graph. You've already asked that question, and I will answer it in a moment. It's not free. Cool. So just to finalize on that, Chainlink is an oracle, real world data and smart contracts. Graph is trying to take blockchain data, put it into dApps and smart contracts. It's also kind of dealing with a lot more data in general, and much more kind of granular data. In general, so how does this work? So we'll go back to the graph. So a dApp adds data to Ethereum. The smart contract emits events like things happening. The graph node scans new blocks and data for a particular subgraph. Let's say I want the subgraph of, again, Bored Ape Yacht Club or Uniswap. And we're going to get a bit technical here. The graph node then looks at these Ethereum events and runs mapping handlers that we provided. And this is just a WASM module. We're not going to go into that. That creates update data entities that are stored. So basically updates the database with new events that are happening. And then the decentralized application queries graph node for this data that has now been aggregated, and you kind of see it in a nice kind of clean way using the node's GraphQL endpoint. And the GraphQL node in turn translates these queries into queries for its underlying data store in order to fetch this data, blah, 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 blah. And the decentralized application displays this data in a rich UI. Long and short of it is we are, again, getting data. We are trying to package it up together so that I can use it in an API to do cool things. And we're not going to go into any more detail than that for this one, so we don't lose people. In terms of, to answer it, unfortunately, we don't necessarily give certificates. We're kind of considering doing it. We've never really seen the need to. If you want a certificate, we can give you one. Cool. And the video is going to go on YouTube tomorrow morning. So now I'm going to kind of go into the thing that kind of people are talking about and go like why is Graph a network? And I touched on it a little bit earlier. So general, Graph is a network because, again, fundamentally, if you're going to use the Graph to get data about things going on a blockchain back into other decentralized applications, again, you want to be decentralized. You don't really want to be relying on centralized sources. So the graph itself needs to be decentralized, just in the same way that Chainlink itself needs to be decentralized. But also being decentralized comes with some other general benefits. So one, it's permissionless; anyone can use it. You don't have to go to a service provider in order to kind of convince someone to let you use the graph. I'm just going to move my blinds down because the sun is peeking through. Secondly, it's open source. Like, you can see how it works. You can verify how it works. Trust and verify. Always very important things. And no one also, like, obviously the graph is collecting a ton of data and it's storing it in a decentralized manner. It's storing it on IPFS, but which is a decentralized storage thing. We have a whole series on that. But no one has control over this data. It's all stored itself on chain, which is kind of really important. And the community decides how to run this brilliant thing that the graph is. And we kind of control the way this is run through incentives. And we'll talk about the token in a moment. I know I had a couple of questions on that. So the token is GRT. Let's get this over. So let's go to CoinGecko. I was looking at this earlier. I am a proud graph holder, and why aren't you clicking? Come on. Being very slow. And you can see that this thing called GRT has a price and a market cap of 5 billion and a fully diluted, which means if all the tokens were to be released, and there's still some to be released, of 10 billion. We're not going to go into the economics, or rather what drives value, whether graph should be worth X, Y, or Z. If you know the answer to why something should be worth something or anything, you should be a far better trader than I am. But in general, there's a thing called graph. And why is there a token? So you want to use it to maintain economic security of the graph network and the integrity of the data. So in order to, basically in simple terms, in order to verify, if you're going to have people performing roles on the graph network, you want to verify that they are trustworthy people. And one simple way to do that is for them to stake a token that has some economic value, and that is the graph token. It's a work token, and it is an ERC20, which means it runs on the Ethereum blockchain. And in general, it is used to, again, verify reputation, to incentivize people with rewards, and also to give out punishments by removing their GRT. And we also kind of pay some fees in GRT, which gives it some velocity. And in general, you have 4 roles within the graph network. So developer, of which there's probably lots of you can hear today, indexers, curators, and delegators. I'm going to talk about each of them a little bit. A developer is obviously those that use the graph to build great applications. So build subgraphs, put them into their dApps, all of this jazz. Anyone could be a developer. It's very, very simple. We'll look through how you build a subgraph very quickly today. An indexer is someone who's actually staking GRT in order to provide computational resources to do the indexing. So the computation is not happening itself, like on a centralized computer that no one has access to. Anyone can be an indexer. You currently have to stake 100,000 GRT. There are other ways to do it. So that's what, about $100,000. And they get fees. So every time you make a query, you pay a fee in GRT. So someone was saying, like, how does GRT have a price if it's free? It's not free. It's you pay a query fee. And you get rewards for doing your kind of this service. And if you are a bad indexer, so if you are someone asks this data to be indexed, obviously you don't do it explicitly like asking, you do it on chain, and it's like in a decentralized manner. Let's take asking in a very general sense. If you are asking to have some data indexed, and that node doesn't index it, node being a person in the network doing indexing, then they can lose the stake. So the stake is effectively a proxy for reputation here. And if they're good, they get fees, but if they're bad and they're malicious or they're just inactive, they will get kind of slashed, which means their stake removed. So this is incentive for them to be good actors. And again, a use of a GRT token, it has a reputational benefit. A curator, again, this is a kind of non-technical thing, is to signal which subgraphs need to be created. So anyone can use a subgraph. So you can either create your own or you can use existing ones. We'll look at them a bit later. And if you're like, well, we should have a subgraph about this new application that's popped up, and you signal that early, you can earn a share of the query fees that subgraphs then generates. So obviously, the more popular the subgraph, the more fees it's going to generate, and more fees will go to the original creator. So there's an incentive for you to be nice and early, and kind of making sure that particular subgraphs are created. And then you can be a delegator. So let's say you just have a ton of GRT, but you don't want to stake for whatever reason. Sorry, you don't want to be an indexer. You can't be bothered. You should be a delegator, and you can give your GRT to an indexer, and that can increase their reputation. So that's kind of cool. One thing you can do, and you do that with any amount of GRT. So I'm going to now take questions. I'm going to look under the hood a bit, and some cool stuff. So an indexer. So actually, Sean, I'll take your first question first. Does that mean if the price is already sort of, there's no necessity for using Chainlink to data from outside? Well, we'll just use a graph. No, well, think about this. So you wouldn't. So graph is giving you very specific data about transactions, things. So it's like, so let's go to Etherscan. It's like from this let's take this random transaction. So this is someone, I don't know what someone's doing here, creating from something from nothing. Let's actually find one where someone's trading. I bet I can't find one. That's someone wrapping some ether. Tell you what, let's go to Uniswap. Bear with. Okay, this is someone trading Uniswap. Yeah, I know that's ironic. Trading Uniswap, the token, given this is an exchange. Actually, this is someone sending some uni. So the price of DAI is not itself stored on the blockchain. Like, I know that someone has traded like this much uni. Actually, it's not a trade. I want to find trade. Let us. There we go. If my laptop is gonna speed up. Here we go. Much better. So this is a trade. So like, obviously I can infer the price on this trade, but like this happened 13 minutes ago. Anything could have happened with the price. So just having data about a specific transaction, which Graph will give us like all that data and give us it for a lot of them. I'd still have to aggregate it together when like, why would I do this when I could just go like, if I go to Chainlink, there is a like, there will be a feed. Let's see. You can get some Chainlink feeds directly on here. Okay, that's not easy and obviously to pay. I can just get a feed of what the price is on CoinGecko or Uniswap like right now, and that will give me their aggregated one. So obviously, like again, there's a benefit for piecing it all together from the on-chain data. Fine, but like it's not you just get Chainlink will have a price oracle for everything, and it's like very reliable. So I wouldn't worry about that. But you could use the graph and piece it all together. Absolutely, just be like really inefficient. I believe it is free, the hosted one. Actually, I've never used the hosted one. I've only used the decentralized one. I think the plan is long term to close it down, like it was a short term thing. But for now, I think it'll operate for free. What classifies indexes to be good or bad? Well, just like we'll go into this a little bit later. You also have our indexes checking other indexes and making sure they're doing things right. But an index in general is just like using their computational resources to make sure data is queried correctly and sent and made available to the API. Who are the possible users that might use Graph? dApp developers. So if like pretty much everyone, as I said, pretty much everyone uses the graph for something, because everyone needs to get some on-chain data into their kind of smart contracts or into their application to find out what's going on chain, if only for monitoring purposes. But there's kind of a myriad different things. Who are the competitors? Do you know what? It's a very good question. There is one called Covalent. I'm not going to do a kind of big like. My job is to educate and to show, not to yeah, the job of the teacher is to educate, not necessarily to lead someone to a particular conclusion, but to give you the information and for you to investigate for yourself and make your own conclusion. But covalent is another one, and different chains will have different one. So should we have a look at some? So people decided to ask about like what happens. Let's see this. Let's talk about the Graph Explorer. So this is just a look into what's happening for the graph. So I think this gives us a nice kind of overview of everything. And this is how much indexing is staked. This is how much delegating stuff is staked. This is how many query fees have been generated, which is in total 259,000 GRT. Let's not go into the economics of, okay, if the fees are only that much, why is the token price X? And in general, we can see a lot of cool things. So let's look at the different subgraphs that are available. Forgive my throat. and my chest. So I can get one for sushi. So sushi swap. Sushi does many things. It is a Uniswap competitor at heart. It's a DEX, and I can trade from, again, one thing to another. This looks very much like Uniswap. And going back here, well, I can easily use this to query, and I can get all the data about what's going on in sushi, which is cool, and I might need. I can see who is indexing this data and who is making sure it's available at all times. And I can curate. I can see the creators, and I can also, we'll talk about the playground a little bit later. Yeah, I can see how much query fees different creators have generated. I know someone asked about that. So this person, by being like, so this person's been creating since then. So who's got the most fees? This person. I don't know why. Because so as part of, I forgot to mention this, as part of curating, you can stake more graph to signal how kind of influential you think, or how important you think this particular subgraph will be. So this person put a lot of GRT in to kind of say, like, I really think this is going to be important, even though they weren't the earliest. They were fairly early, but like not super early. And as such, they are getting a ton of rewards. So despite, let's see, so they've got 22 graph rewards. I mean, it's not that much in the grand scheme of things. They've got 22 graph rewards, which is only $20 for staking 100,000, for kind of putting in 100,000 graph. But it's, I guess, a long-term bet, or 183,000. Again, we can see all the cool other things subgraphs that are created. So I might want to get data about what's happening on RAI, which is a stablecoin, and about their bonding or something like that. And yeah, and I can see the kind of activity. And you can also see what this is all the types of data that I can possibly get, so I can know what collateral and debt there is. We're not going to go into the basics of RAI here, who the users are, what is the collateralization rate. I can get all of this data, which again, at like, what is the incentives? Tell me about the Uniswap pair. Like, all of this data is available for me to get, which again, I might want to use to build cool stuff. Let's look at some more. Let's look at, let's see, get one that's fairly well known. Uniswap v3. Official. Again, what sort of data can I get from Uniswap v3? Well, I can get, let's go load a sec. I can get for every transaction, all of this stuff, and in general. So positions, stuff about the pools, about swaps, daily data, daily kind of pool data. All of this stuff is available. So you can't. So Graph is not on every blockchain. So this currently, I think it works on Ethereum, all the EVM ones pretty much. So Avalanche, C-Chain, very good example. Near protocol, there's a lot of documentation about that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Yeah. Yeah, so this, you can also have a look at participants in the networks. I can see all the indexes. So this is a big fund framework. Lemnis Cap, good friend of ours. You can see them. I can see all this stuff. I can see like how much they've staked, how much they own, how much they've delegated. I can see who's curating, who the biggest creators are, what subgraphs they're creating. I can see who all the delegators are. Like, there's a lot of things I can see here. So it's very much worth playing around. Cool. So let us go to, and I'll take questions in a little bit. So what if you wanted to make a subgraph? Oh, I should have this link prepared. There we go. So what does this actually look like? So that was what I have not deployed. So I think I've already, my wallet's connected. So, here we go. This is brilliant. We can see all the different places I can do it. So I can get one on so Ethereum, Avalanche, Arbitrum, which is layer 2 of Ethereum, Celo, Phantom, Clover, Fuji, which is a testnet for Avalanche, Matic, Optimism, which is layer 2, XDAI, which is a layer 2 as well. So all these different places I can go. So let's make one called test. I'm not going to go all the way along, but just going to give you an idea of kind of how simple the UI is, by the way. And I can give it a description. I can give it source code. Obviously, I have to actually write the code for this, which I haven't done. This is just giving me the general descriptions. Yeah, and we'll go through in a couple of weeks how you actually do this from start to finish, but this is just to give people a general view. Let's see what the minimum stuff I have to do to let me publish. We'll do actually this. Do you think this will work? I think this might work. It's not going to work. No. Anyway, we'll go through it properly later rather than me trying to create a fake one very quickly. Cool. 1 second. Oh, have I not put the date in? Well, so let us go to, so if you do want to start getting properly started rather than me doing this, you can go to graph.com/docs/developer quick starts, where it actually talks you through doing it properly, and you install Graph CLI, which is written in JavaScript. You initialize your subgraph. You actually write the subgraph, so we'll talk about how you do that and how you make one very simply. Check your logs. If you're using the hosted service, you do that, and then talk about how you define the subgraph, how you actually publish it, and yeah, so not like I just did. You first publish it on testnet to make sure everything's working, so that Rinkby, and then publish the actual thing itself. But this is a very good kind of resource for you to kind of have a play with, and yeah, cool. So that is a whistle-stop tour of the graph. I think that's pretty much it. This is supposed to give you a kind of 1,000-foot view, and we'll drill down into the details a little bit later. Data economy is on Thursday. On Tuesday, we're going to look at subgraphs and make our own subgraphs. Next Thursday, creating a delegation on the graph, because a lot of you have asked about that. 25th is kind of a more non-technical one, how to get involved with the graph. And we'll look at graph on Avalanche as well on the 2nd, and the project showcase. But in general, just to summarize, go back to one of our initial slides. Point of the graph, as I say, is to get data from blockchains, pretty much back into blockchains exclusively. And this is important because if you're building decentralized applications, we want to make sure that the source of our data, or the thing helping to get that data, is itself decentralized. Cool. There is a playground, so let's start taking questions. Again, please forgive my voice. I'm struggling a little, well, quite a lot, but so there is a playground. Where is it? Where is it? I had it earlier. Bear with. I'll find it a bit later and put it. So let me go back to questions. So Books asks about other tutorials. So that I point you to. So we'll go through it in general. So if you want to get started, I don't want to go too technical today, but please do go to this link. This is the obvious place to go. Is your issue specifically with Truffle or with blockchains in general? Because Truffle is just an IDE, right? That's not an issue. But let's see if Books comes back. So Sean, you've got lots of questions. I might check them from the top. Latency is also a very good point. Obviously, Hello World mentions if an indexer is just slow, that is going to affect how reliable they are and also who actually uses that indexer. As you'll notice, there are lots of different indexes competing. So if I look at the network participants, like there's lots of obviously indexes are maintaining different subgraphs, but there are also lots for a particular subgraph. So if I look at framework, oh, it's such a cool UI, by the way. You can have things like disputes as well. If someone is like, I don't think this person is doing the job properly, you can dispute it and it will get resolved by the community. So this person is helping maintain all of these subgraphs, but someone else is obviously helping maintain the USDC subgraph. So you've got all these different indexes, and they're all kind of competing, but kind of also maintaining at the same time. And also you can see, you can see how much they've allocated for that. Can you show Prashad? I think we've kind of done that. This is a subgraph. By the way, this is kind of the playground if you want to start playing around with kind of how getting certain piece of data. So it's like, so cool. Sorry, I'm fanboying over the graph. Proud graph holder. It's being a bit too slow for this demonstration, but if you go on to, I'll put the link into chat. If you go there, you can have a play around yourself. How many indexer nodes are there? Quite a lot. There's 160. There'll probably be some names some of you might recognize. Again, this is a fund. This is a fund. Figment is used for this sort of thing. It's a resource for doing staking. Stake Squid, they're quite famous. Block Daemon, again, these are all for staking. You can kind of see lots of different operators. And obviously, because it's blockchain, I can actually get information about these people. What is it? Not as much as I thought I could. Okay, cool. How to pull data out of blockchain without using the graph. I mean, you can do it. If we go back to, oh no, my slides. This slides and video will be made available to everyone tomorrow. By the way, if I go back to, you could do it. Like, there's no reason you can't do it. Like, you could scrape Etherscan, or like you could like listen specifically yourself. You could rebuild what Graph is doing. It's just, why would you do it? It would like take ages. Like, Graph has been designed to do this for you, and is pretty good and actually like not expensive in my experience. I don't know the exact fees, but it's never been something that, I mean, you can tell the fees aren't that huge because the aggregate fees aren't that huge. Cool. You can, you could, so in Hack DeFi, I'm actually going to refer to something. We did a hackathon with the graph before, and we will do more. Let me see if I can find it. This was Future Blockchain 2. Just to give you an example. So you can definitely use the graph and stuff. You can create subgraphs for things that subgraphs aren't created. That would count for Hack DeFi. Let's see if we can. This is many hackathons ago, by the way. So in this case, it was just build a subgraph to index different smart contracts haven't been indexed before. Or you could build a front end that takes certain bits of data and displays them in some cool way. Again, like, there's many different things you could use. Like, maybe I just want to build an explorer, like, for a particular blockchain. Like, that's an obvious thing you could build. Or maybe I want to build a front end that displays the velocity of transactions on Uniswap, for instance. Plenty of things that you can do. Please do in Hack DeFi. And if people want to find out more about Hack DeFi, it's our DeFi hackathon happening at the moment that finishes at the end of a couple of weeks, 13 days time, and you can build any DeFi project you want to do. Right, everyone, my throat unfortunately is completely closing up, and it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. So the place to continue the discussion is on Discord, and Anupam, oh, well done, look at that, like right on cue. So do come find me. My name is Anthony Beaumont. I am CEO of Encode, and we'll be delivering a few of the future workshops to come. So please do come to me for any questions you may have about the graph, and if it is too technical for me, we have some wonderful graph developers that can help us as well. In the meantime, thank you very much for coming today. Maybe not. Let's not finish with the Encode hackathon. So thank you very much for coming today, and we've very much enjoyed giving this talk to you today, and we look forward to seeing you in future events. The YouTube will be up tomorrow morning, but more importantly, if I just finish off, probably should have had these ready, but please do join the Take Incline AMA, which is not that one, it is that one. Tomorrow, co-founder of Encode in maintaining the graph. That is tomorrow. It's at 6 p.m. Tuesday, the 2nd of November. So please do join that. It's an AMA. You'll be able to ask whatever you want directly live to Tegan, who is fantastic. So in the meantime, everyone, thank you very much. Thank you for bearing with me with my chest. Have a great afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you are, and see you all very soon.